Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast, a podcast about learning to fly and flying later in life. This is episode 15, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about things that if you could do your flight journey or your flight training all over again, things you would do different, or things that you thought went well. So it should be a good time. My name is Chris Moran. I'm the Midlife Pilot on YouTube, and alongside co-host Brian Siskind. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Hello, and welcome to people in the chat. And I'm excited about this topic. I think it'll be good for even those that are perhaps halfway through their private pilot training. It doesn't necessarily need to be just reflections from people that have finished. I think there's a lot of people that are inside training right now that will have something fresh to offer the situation as well.
Yeah, for sure. What's been happening? Oh, bad timing. Here, I'll fill time.
No, you're fine. What's been happening? I just finished a new video that's really artistic, I suppose is the way you could describe it. So it's going to probably go over some people's heads, or they won't like it very much, but I'm pretty excited about having that done. Got some flying coming up. I'm going to, let's see, Friday night, if the weather's good, I'm going to do my night currency. And then Sunday, I'm getting the club plane, making sure it's good, getting it back here to John Toon. And then Monday, taking my wife to Birmingham, flying down via Muscle Shoals to Birmingham for a couple of nights to do an anniversary kind of just getaway kind of weekend. So,
very cool.
So that's the next flight trip on the books.
Awesome.
And the weather's looking great, so I'm stoked.
Yeah, this time of year, it's you get lucky sometimes like that, I guess.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
What about you?
I flew the 235 to Newport News last week for a 3-day work trip. That was my first. We talked about this a little bit on a hangout for patrons last week, but it was my first experience in like actually working around weather, both clouds and also like precipitation and rain. And so we had, delayed radar. We always warn everybody, like, use your iPad with ADS-B, but know that it's, 4 or 5 or more minutes delayed, and, pay attention to that. But we used that and really did some kind of clever navigating to get around the heaviest parts of the rain. We still ended up flying through some rain for about a half an hour, which was pretty, it was fine. I mean, it was still VFR, didn't break any regs, but it was definitely keeps you a little bit more, you're kind of paying attention. You kind of sit up in your seat a little taller, and pay attention.
That's awesome. I've been wanting to get more experience like that, but also not wanting to get more experience like that. You know what I mean? It's like, I want there to be good weather, but
We planned really well for it. I went as far, even both ways of the trip. I don't always call for an actual briefing from a briefer because, honestly, the tools we have available today are so much better than what they used to be. And, but in that specific case, I did want to, I talked with a briefer on both legs just to make sure that, I wasn't missing something obvious. And then also, so we knew very well what we were getting into, but it would have been very easy just to say like, let's just drive. I mean, this is, it looks dicey, but I just think this time of year, it was a few 100-mile trip. It's like, you almost can't cancel every flight you might make like that because there's like pop-up rain and storms along your route of flight. Because the summertime, it's going to be that way darn near every day. You'd never fly. So I think we looked back on it. I kind of broke it down after getting back, and I really feel pretty good about the decision making. It was, we were never at risk, but it was definitely at the extent of my comfort. Like it was the end of my, kind of,
excellent.
If it got any worse, we would have done something different, but it was great. It was a really good learning experience.
Oh man, that's awesome. I feel like in ForeFlight where I feel like the forecast discussions are so valuable inside the TAF, sort of option, but they're so kind of buried. You have to really drill to just get to the forecast discussion. And I'm always amazed at, because it gives you such a great way of understanding big picture, what's happening, what's going to be happening, what's expected reasonably, human conversational tone.
That's right.
It's really cool. So if anybody hasn't been using that, you make sure you dig into that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure that's sourced from just aviationweather.gov or whatever, but
the clouds, I feel like, and that's probably just a meteorological thing. Like clouds are still hard to predict, I think, still. And so like, I'm always kind of not bummed, but you just can't take to the bank, like base, like exact ceilings and all along the route of flight, and also tops. That's one of the things we found on the way down, that we ended up trying to climb over a thing. We were above 12,000 feet trying to get over these clouds, and we weren't going to make it. And so like we ended up kind of in a bowl, like we were coming up to a layer that we couldn't clear. And there were clouds we had kind of gotten ourselves surrounded in this, kind of in this bowl. But we could tell that it was clear under after now we climbed all the way up there. It was like, if we get down below like 7,500, I bet we can do it. So we ended up doing some like pretty wild, like descending steep turns almost in a bowl, to get down about, under them, and then flew the rest of the way. But that was another cool, that's just how you learn. And that was as close as we would have wanted to be, being boxed in somewhere, where it's like, really
that's awesome, man. I want exactly that kind of experience, just not with perhaps my wife flying with me, right? But just maybe another pilot or something.
Yes.
But yeah, so let's get into our topic for this evening. I think we're going to get a lot of good stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. So, that was a good suggestion. I think you said you saw it in one of the Facebook groups that we're all in. I guess the idea was that, if you could start over, like, having gone through this now, and you look back at where you're at in your journey, whether it's like you said earlier, like halfway through your training, fully done training, or you've been done for a long time, like, what are some things that you would do different now? I mean, never hardly do you get a chance to have a do-over, but like, what would you do differently if you could do it again now? That's a pretty interesting idea. I've been thinking about it a little bit today.
Yeah. It's also, it's kind of like, if you could go back to high school, you would just ask the girl out, like, whatever she says, no, I don't know, you wouldn't be all worked up about it.
Right.
It's easy to have sort of like the hindsight is 2020 thing, but I mean, there's value in that. So I think it's worth getting into. I had made a little short list. I can just throw out the first thing that I had that was top of mind for me when I was thinking about this is coming into it from just a mental attitude type of place, understanding that one of the most important things you can have as a student is a short memory, and just to not beat myself up so bad, and understand that this is hard and you're not a prodigy and it's just going to take some work. I was upset that I wasn't a prodigy, and I thought there might be a chance, that I would have 3 or 4 lessons in. I thought maybe. And then I looked at my instructor at some point and just said, was like, I'm not a prodigy at this. And he's like, no, but you're average, and that's good, kind of thing. So, ultimately that became just as rewarding to just be designated as like, really, I'm average. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Average.
For sure.
So, but anyway, so I feel like the thing for me was just the mental attitude and preparation ahead of time to be like, you're going to beat yourself up. You're going to want to, don't do it, and have a short memory. Don't bring the stress from one lesson's outcome into another. Start fresh every time. That would be my first thing.
That's great. I'm going to actually show a comment here real quick, because this actually leads into my first one. Bearded Aviator said, also, knowing what I know now, I would have started 25 years ago. So after you sent the topic idea to me, I started thinking a lot about this as well. And I also, knowing what I know now, kind of wish I had done this, like, maybe professionally, or maybe done this as a profession. Like, this had kind of been my thing from when I was young.
Yeah.
That's a little bit, I think, beyond the scope of what I really wanted the question to be for me. Like, I'm not trying
I would say though, totally appropriate from a midlife pilot standpoint.
Yeah, you're right.
We're kind of doing, right? I mean, and that's really a thing, prepare somehow for the fact that you might love this so much that you wish you did it
right
a long time ago, and you're going to feel like you regret it, but you can't.
But let's avoid that. Let's avoid that whole mind tunnel for a minute. But
the despair of mortality.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what have I done with myself? But like, I wish I had waited. So I have a couple of things. I wish I had waited a teeny little bit longer to start mine, and I'll tell you why. I'm by teeny, I'm talking like a year or two.
Okay.
I got. And how I do, this is a fault of mine. I got the idea that I was going to do this thing. And when that happens, it's generally kind of hell or high water. Like, I'm doing this now. And the reality is, in our both in our like timing of just how busy we were with stuff in that phase, and also financially, a year would have made a gigantic difference for us. But I did it anyway, and I paid the price midway through because we were in the middle of, we bought a building, we were in the middle of like a crazy thing, and I ended up, there's a layover in my logbook right in the middle of my training, like post solo time, like I'm saying 20 hours in probably, there's an 8-month layoff where I didn't fly once.
I keep forgetting that that's yeah.
So what did that do? You know, that just kind of stretched the thing out, and but if I had just waited a year, things would have been, I could have flown, you know, more regularly every week. Things just would have been a smoother experience. So it's weird. I wish I had done it, you know, 20 years earlier, 25 years earlier, but or then I wish I'd have, or 1 year later. Right. Yeah. It's pretty wild.
Timing. So ultimately the distillation here is, it's about timing, I suppose.
Yep.
So just knowing when the right time is to start, I mean, for me, it was kind of I'm the same way. It's like I'm sure a lot of us are in this. Once we start getting our head pointed in a direction, we're going to go do this thing, then just get out of the way. I'm going to read one more thing, and then you can, I want to hear what else is on your list. This is from the Badger pilot. I can relate to this as well, but I made a mental decision halfway through my training to correct it. He says, I was so focused on getting done in as few hours as possible that I missed a lot of great learning opportunities until after my check ride. I wish I would have taken the time to enjoy the ride. And I can't tell you how many club members that we've had join our flying club who are like, so I can do this in 40 hours. Like, and it's like, it's a race. Everybody's racing. Everybody wants to like do the thing. And I tell everybody now, because I said, I missed the first half of mine. That's what I wanted to do too. And then when it hit me, I am flying a freaking airplane. And just because my instructor is in the plane with me doesn't make that any less amazing. Like, I'm going to take every single lesson as a flight, whether it's before I have my certificate or after. Like, an hour is an hour in the airplane. And once I kind of changed my own mindset about that did kind of change everything about the training process. Like, but yes, that's a great point. That's an excellent point. So another one I had was, this is maybe a little bit more particular, but there was a point once I got into doing pattern work in that sort of ramp that you kind of get on to eventually do your first solo. I at that point sort of said, okay, I want the same airplane every time. Cause I was getting rotated through a few different 172s that had pretty different things. And I wish that I would have insisted, you know, we're reasonable, but you know, sometimes you can't avoid it. Something's in maintenance or whatever, you want to fly. But I just wish that I would have asked for consistency on a lot of fronts up, you know, in the very beginning of the process. But it's hard to feel like you're so overwhelmed by the fact that you're even doing this that it's hard to, in the first, say, 10 lessons, get to the point where you feel like I own this training. They work for me. You don't want to claim that I know anything, right? And, you know, but some of those instincts were actually pretty good. As soon as I stayed consistent in one plane, I did much better. I wish I would have done that from the very beginning.
Isn't it funny how that changes over time? At least for me, because now all I want to do is fly other, like now I'm excited. So I was telling you, Brian, we've talked a lot offline about this, but like, so our club, we've got the 172 that I trained in. Now I was fortunate in that I did train. I was the only person renting that plane during the entirety of my training. So it was available for me basically I didn't have any scheduling problems. I flew it 100% of the hours until my check ride. I had like 2 hours in a freaking 300 horsepower Saratoga with my instructor once, some random flight, but like I was flying that airplane. And then we bought the 235 and put it in the club. And that was I'm still learning. I mean, that's a huge stretch. And now the club is adding a couple guys in our club are buying a 150 and are going to lease to the club. And we've already kind of started talking through the process. And I don't even think we're going to require checkouts in it for everybody who's already been checked out in the 172, because it is such a similar platform. Like, we're going to go over the speeds. We're going to go over performance limitations, because that's the big thing with the little 150, right? Is the weight and balance and the performance limitations
coming up.
but part of the problem is there's a lot of our members who we physically can't check out in the plane, meaning I can't fit a member and another instructor in the plane. So like
Wow.
if you've trained in 172, if you're checked anyway, the whole point of that tirade is like, I can't wait for it to get here because I'm going to sprint to the airport to put cameras on that plane and film my first ever, like I'm going to do my due diligence, obviously, in my pre-flight and like know the POH and like the checklist. Like I'm not going to just be stupid, but like, this is my first time ever in this plane, and I cannot wait to just get in the airplane and fly it.
Yeah.
And see what that is like. That would be the first, right? That's the first time I will have ever got into an unfamiliar airplane by myself and had to just work through it and like learn to feel it and understand what it is. And I just am so excited about that.
Yeah.
Now, obviously you wouldn't do that in the invert. Like it's only because it's so similar to the 172 that you already know. It's not like I would say like, give me that Beechcraft like Bonanza and I'm just going to go like knock myself out. Yeah, no, but anyway, it's a 150. So anyway, yes,
I definitely want to fly other planes. I just don't have a lot of clear opportunities to do it. I did tell you that my club is getting a Cherokee 180.
Yes, that's exciting. A low wing option.
So yeah, that'll be probably just right, and then that'll probably end up being my next time I come out to the Outer Banks. I'll probably take something like that.
Yeah.
For the long haul. But all right. So another one I had is I feel like it sounds dumb, but I wish I would have done more. You were already so deep in radio navigation, and sims and all this kind of stuff. I didn't have any of that. And I just didn't really get a lot of time just putzing with radio navigation. We just touched on it enough to get through whatever, but it doesn't feel part of my practice. If I'm on a longer flight, I'll dial in a VOR or something and just like whatever. It's not where I'm going anyway, but
right.
It's hard because, obviously it is important to know that stuff, but it's also not important at this stage, but it's still important. And you need to know how to use everything in the plane. And I feel like I need to just do some navigation flights or something just to kind of get up with that. So that's something that I think that if maybe in the big picture, I guess what I'm saying is, take it all in, right? Like don't let something slide, with minimal knowledge when you're going to get on your own. And if you're not in a place where you can keep up with it yourself and teach yourself, and you probably need some help or something, you're going to be in a bad spot. So take everything seriously, I guess. I did not take it seriously. It was just, I let it fall off because my brain was full.
Sure. I do love me some VORs. But I will tell you in my area geographically, they're virtually all offline, or what's happening now is even if they haven't been, some of them haven't been scheduled to be, or they're on the schedule to be decommissioned, but they're not there yet. When they go out of service, they just don't repair them now. So virtually all the VOR stations in my region are offline permanently. And ultimately the bulk, vast, extreme majority of the network is scheduled for decommission. But I would like, when I go to the Outer Banks for those trips, I plan my route because there's VOR stations pretty much along my route. So I have two waypoints in there, Kessel VOR and then Richmond, which is right over top. It's on the airfield at Richmond International. So those are two waypoints that I use, and I do use them in my Nav2. I keep my Nav2 on VOR the whole time, and I do try to track it. I do try to keep, it's like what, because it is, you're right. It's one more thing that like if poop hit the fan and all else went upside down, I could still get where I was going just on the VORs.
Yeah.
I have another one. Speaking of kind of training things in different airplanes, how about, and I had a great instructor. If you guys have watched the series with Tyler, like
when's he coming on, by the way? I
need to get him back on. He is so busy. He's got a baby. He's got another baby on the way. He's flying Lear jets now for a living. He got promoted to captain. I mean, wow. He's going crazy, gangbusters, but I need to get him back on. But
he's too good for us. He's big time in us.
He has moved up in the world. I don't even get to talk to him hardly anymore. He's so busy. He's always flying.
Wow.
But, he got a Citabria, an aerobatic Citabria So he wants to get me up to do my tail wheel and that and do aerobatics. I'm like, no, I don't know about all that. But how about this idea of like, I think it would have been beneficial maybe to have had some hours with other instructors. I mean, like have a primary guy like I did with Tyler, but I think I could have benefited from some additional time with some other people with other perspectives maybe on some things.
That's an interesting idea in the sense that theoretically it would be of no harm if you wanted to really trick out your training. Like it's weird to me that some of the stuff is left for just after you get the private pilot. Then if you want to go do this, then you do this. But why not have like an option that's still a stated kind of curriculum that's just where they basically get in the same way that we get simulated instrument. We're not getting instrument rated, but we're getting enough to do a 180 and turn around,
That's right.
So why not have a few more wrinkles? Like how cool would it be if there was, I guess it's just about resources, but it'd be cool to have other disciplines or, some entry level aerobatics or I don't know, just various little tastes of things through it.
For sure.
Maybe required, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know. Just could be richer.
I've gotten on a tangent here. Old Aviator has had a comment. I don't think all of the VORs will go away. They're still used for some approaches, and I do think he is correct. So I've now found myself in a rabbit hole of finding a list of VORs that are on the current FAA decommissioning list. And at this moment in time, there are 117 VOR stations that are on the discontinuation list. So certainly there are more than 117
total.
I'm sorry. There have been 117 decommissioned to date. And on the target list of decommissioning, there is an additional 187 to be decommissioned.
And they're just doing that by attrition. They're just letting them just die.
I think there is a strategy. I think it's more than that. I think some of them that are key to like Victor Airways, like kind of on-off points of Airways. I know most of them are, but I'm saying the more major ones they're keeping around longer, and probably ones that are key to approaches and stuff. But yeah. I think there is a strategy here. But man, you look at the list, and there's some that are in. It's not like these are all just rural, like middle of nowhere VORs. So I don't know. I got to do some research now and see. So that would be 187 plus 116 that have been decommissioned. So that's, or are going to be. I don't know how many VORs there are in the United States, but that's a pretty big list. And that's updated as of February of this year. So
Jay Little has a question about instrument training that we're not capable of answering, I guess, because we don't have instrument ratings yet. But I'd like to talk about that a little bit. I'm still working on my ground and just trying to get sort of attenuated to the idea that I'm going to do it. And I know, Chris, you've actually started in with some lessons. So I have a feeling we'll get into that, probably both of us, more around the summertime, fall time. But yeah, how many hours do you think would be proficient rather than just being legal? I mean, we'll let you know, to be determined. Probably more than what's required.
Yeah, and that always is the case.
I think it's just about keeping it up, as opposed to. That's actually, what's interesting is that I think that's actually, if I have any hesitation towards really bearing down an instrument right now, it's actually that I know that now, in the same way that night currency or other things, it's just going to add to my rotation of things that I need to be really sincere about being pursuant to and owning a responsible level of proficiency for them. And that actually kind of, it seems daunting to me more than the curriculum and the practice.
I think there's probably when we talk about instrument, I think there's two different things that we're really talking about staying proficient at, right? One is like flying by reference to the instruments with no outside reference, like controlling your airplane when you can't see outside. So I think that's like one thing. By control, I just mean like straight and level, like
not die level.
Yeah, not die. Then there is all the like flying the procedures and the holds and the entries to holds and the approaches. Like, so to me, I almost see them as two different things that probably require their own level of keeping proficient. One is like not forgetting how to scan and do the flying that way. And the other is, doing the approaches and flying the instrument procedures correctly. Both certainly, like you say, will require more than the legal minimum, I'm sure, but I bet you for each individual vary greatly, like how much it really takes to stay, maybe it's the riding a bike thing with, flying with reference to the instruments. Like you stay perfect at it. It takes some time, but you don't really forget how to do it. You know what I mean? And then for flying the approaches, it's all on charts and stuff, but there's a lot of stuff you just have to remember, there's a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
We'll know more about what it is soon.
Old Aviator asks if I have done any time in a simulator as part of my IFR training. He said, just curious. I started with about 10 hours in one. So I have not ever used a appropriate simulator that is loggable for time. By simming, all I ever did was used X-Plane at home with my own little setup, along with either VATSIM or the one I always forget, the subscription that I paid for air traffic control, that they're based in the California. They have the whole California region covered. But those were the only things I did with sims. I would like to find one. I just think it'd be a cool experience and a cool way to learn. And in full disclosure, as far as instrument lessons, I have like one that wasn't even really like, we spent about a half hour under the hood and practiced like straight and level and like flying by instruments and doing some turns and stuff. I have done no studying Pilot Edge. Thank you. It's Pilot Edge. Thank you. I have done no studying really yet, and haven't got into any procedure flying or any of that kind of stuff yet. So
you're about done is what you're saying.
Yeah, I got it about wrapped up.
It's definitely one where it's just going to be all about the written until it's time to go.
Yep.
But yeah, so I actually have you ever used a simulator that's improved whatever time building?
It's surprisingly I don't think the restrictions are quite as strict as you might think them to be. They just have to meet certain benchmarks for accuracy and, performance and like things. It's not like you think about it, it's not like it has to be one of these giant full motion, like full wraparound. It's not that necessarily.
The requirements are like more than one screen, maybe.
Right. And there's certain restrictions.
Controls.
Like actual flight controls, but then also a platform where you can change, or the instructor can change parameters of the simulator, initiate failures, change visibility and stuff as needed, those kind of things.
That was so fun to play God as an instructor, doing that to a poor sap like one of us in the instructor or in the simulator booth. That would be really fun.
So this will really be the first time like getting into an instrument where I'll really have a valid use for the simulator. I learned a ton on it leading, like you mentioned earlier, like leading into my training on both like VORs and also, but really radio communication was a huge part that I learned on simming. But you talk about where it really is beneficial, even for like on your little home sim, the instrument stuff is so key because it takes away the need for this super massive graphics adapter to render the outside world. Because who gives a crap? Like make your panels full screen. Like if all you're trying to do is fly like procedures and approaches and stuff, you don't need to see outside anyhow. Like,
yep.
It's just a panel to keep the instruments going and fly that.
Well, so there's, I guess I forget what the rules are. It's like you can do 10 hours, I think, towards instrument or something like that. And so they have one up at my school up the street here. So I'm thinking that might be how I start before I get into all the rest. But yeah, I'm interested. Since I've never done any flight sim of any kind ever, what do you predict will be my response to flight school sim?
you're going to think it's, you're going to be like, well, this doesn't feel anything like the airplane. I mean, that's my experience, was that I was shocked at how much not like the airplane it felt. But this is I got to phrase this correctly so that nobody that's listening reads into this incorrectly. I have found lately in my flying that some of the things that did make sense to me from sim, because, in a sim, there's no risk. You do whatever you want. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've stall spin planes in the sim, just intentionally being completely out of my mind, because why not? I mean, you completely screw around and just play with it. This is not instruction, and I don't mean this in the full literal sense, but I do think it gives you a little bit of a head start of the sense for what, not the limits are, but I just feel like all of the hours that I had in flying the Cessna 172s and X-plane got me a little bit of a head start of understanding what the limitations, both, speed and like bank angle and like just what, I mean, because I did it so many times. I'm talking thousands of hours, on X-plane. A lot of it was before I really cared. So I was developing bad habits, but really the last half of it, I mean, still probably 1,000 hours was like legit, trying to do things the right way. I understood what V speeds work. I understood things, and could really kind of work before I got
that's huge,
there, which I think helped me a ton.
No, that's huge. So you were just running full power in a 172.
Oh man, some of the stuff is ridiculous. Like just trying to I don't know, just like trying to take off, get clear up to where you stall, and then like trying to like bring it back and land the opposite direction on the same runway you just took off. I mean, like stuff you would never do in real life. Like,
now let me ask you this: do you feel like that you can tell if you observe other pilots when they're piloting? Do you feel like you can tell what people come from the sim world versus come from not sim world?
No, not from flying. I don't think. I feel like I can tell if people practice on the radio or use Pilot Edge. I mean, I can definitely tell radio people whether they've had a head start on that or not.
Is that just because there's weird little things they say in the Pilot Edge that's like, yes, that's correct, but nobody says that, or those kind of things?
No, I think it's just because I'm making a guess based on, like, if I knew how many hours in the real world these people had, I could pretty much gauge that they were that they had a head start or didn't. You can just kind of tell. Although in fairness, I also hear lots of guys who I know have been flying for 50 years, just people that I know from the area that I hear them on the radio. I'm like, holy crap, how did you do this for, I mean, like some of this stuff is just so bad.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Oh, there's some good questions. We got to get some of these. Food head. I don't recognize. That's a new name for us, I think, on the chat. Do you recognize that, Brian?
No, but I'm all about food.
Me too. Foodhead says, lots of water near me. How did you make peace with engine out forced landing?
How do you make peace with it? Well,
meaning how are you okay with go fly? Yeah. How are you okay to go fly? Like knowing that that's a possibility. I don't know that I have fully. I mean, I think about it every time. Yeah. I think that definitely, like you say, there's water near you. There's obviously, if you've seen any of my videos, there's terrain everywhere here in West Virginia. I mean, there's nowhere to go in a lot of cases around our airport. You just think about it every time. I do think about it every takeoff. I mean, I think about it every single time. And I have made peace with it by knowing that the people who definitively kill themselves are the people who stall spin. And the people who have a chance are the ones that fly it all the way into whatever they're going to fly it into. So I think about being like, when I'm thinking about if I'm going to end up in the river or on the interstate or in the treetops or wherever, my intention is going to be as slow as I can possibly be, with all 40 degrees of flaps in if I've got them, and stalling it right above where I touch down and hope for the best. I just think
holding one hand out the window.
I just know that people that kill themselves are the ones that just pull it because they're panicked and stall the thing and spin it in, and that's guaranteed. That's the end for sure. So just fly it. I mean, make the best decision and try to fly it all the way in.
Well put.
Okay.
15. Oh, that's a correction on my hours of simulator for instrument.
Is it really 15?
I think that might be right. Clearly, we are not CFIs or people that know the regulations.
Oh yeah, we need the disclaimer. Jay Little says, during training, you're taught about making the impossible 180-degree turn after takeoff. And this question's loaded with, there's going to be some parameters required to answer this one. If you had an engine failure, would you two attempt to turn back to the runway or go forward?
Well, the good news is I have briefed this before every flight that I've ever taken from my first flight onward. And so impossible turn is only going to be attempted based on conditions or even thought about at 1,000 feet AGL. And if I'm not at 1,000 feet AGL, I'm going straight ahead, maybe 30 degrees one way or the other. If there's runway remaining and I can get on that, then I'll get on that. But I mean, ultimately, the question's about the impossible turn. I am not going to me, that's something that if you practice it all the time and you own your aircraft and you know your aircraft, then you might be able to get some tighter understanding of exactly what those parameters are. For me, it's 1,000 feet and it depends on what the wind's doing and other things. So that's basically it. So I've said it out loud every single flight and everybody probably should.
I was going to say I have more variables, which probably makes me the opposite of safer, but I have other variables. Like 1,000 feet is my number 2, especially in the Cherokee. Because of the way because its glide is so much worse than the 172. However, there are so many factors that would make me have to think twice if I would do it under 1,000 feet. One is like the length of the runway, because, a 10,000 foot runway, I may already be 700 feet above it at the end of it. Like,
yeah.
In other words, I may have a lot more runway already there that, you know what I mean, to come back to than I do on my little 3,000 foot one at Fairmont. So, the length of the runway matters. Like you mentioned, winds. Like if you're taking off into like a 20 knot headwind, that makes a huge difference because your altitude above the ground, you're still going to be so much closer to the runway. You'll be so much geographically like closer physically to the runway. So it might be a consideration, but I also pay attention to the wind. We're really lucky around like the airport where I'm at, because in addition to the surface winds with our windsocks, we have the power plant that is visible like as we're taking off with smokestacks. So I can also clearly see at the altitude where I'm climbing through exactly which way the wind is blowing at any moment, which would make my determination which way I was going to turn if I was going to come back, into the wind.
Yeah,
is the way that you would do that. So it's 1,000 foot is my general rule, especially at Fairmont where the runway is short and there's stuff everywhere to hit if you don't make it back. Like I would definitely consider if I was in like Iowa and like it was a 10,000 foot runway and at either end of it was like a 6-mile cornfield, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to go back. I mean, I'm just going to try to go back. And if I don't, stall spin is, Old Aviator makes a good point. Under 1,000 feet is the recipe for stall spin. It is. It's I keep coming back to it's really hard to stall spin if you're not pulling. I mean, if your nose is down and you're, you got to still be a pilot. Like can't be stupid in those situations. But I would consider it under 1,000 feet in the Cessna in the right conditions, I think. But we say we've practiced them. We've never really we've never done them aggressively. Like I've seen
or with a non-windmilling propeller.
Right. So there's factors that we just don't know, but definitely, of course, also like you say, there's so many more factors than just that. It's like, where are you? What else is around? Like if there's great options straight ahead, then go there. I mean, there's just so many factors. It's so hard to answer that question. Like as a straight up, would you do this or would you not? And I say, well, I mean, it depends.
Yeah. So Jay Little's got another one here about what would you do differently preparing for your check ride? Wow.
That's a great question. I would not stress as much about it, I think.
Yeah. Just relax. It's just so much easier said than done. You can't, that's retroactive advice that you can't even really offer because it's impossible.
Yeah.
There's just so much on the line. There's so much money and schedule. You know, especially now, people seem to be having a really hard time getting DPEs. I don't know if that's universal or
it's true here.
I was very, very lucky in that way. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else.
I would study my weather more. I would study weather charts and their legends more. I'd understand more of the symbols than I did on a lot of the charts. The ones that I felt were, I mean, you know, not irrelevant, but ones that I wasn't going to, I wasn't going to spend a whole bunch of time in. And I got quizzed pretty hard on those and did not know a lot of things that I needed to know. Mm-hmm. And so I would probably spend a little bit more time just understanding like symbology and some of the stuff on weather charts. But relaxing was the bigger thing. Like my DP spent the entire day trying to get me to chill and just go take him up for a Sunday afternoon flight. That's what he really wanted me to do. And by the time we got to that point, it was like he had me calm down. It was a great experience. But really, I was pretty hyped about it.
Can't you imagine if you were a DPE, how it's kind of like, it must be like kind of like being a cop. You know what I mean? Where you're just driving down the road, but everybody slows down to the speed limit around you, or, you know, just everywhere you go, there's just this field that controls people's behavior in ways that are only probably annoying to you, that you have no control over whatsoever.
Right.
You know, the DPE,
he's like, man, can we not just enjoy our like time together?
I can totally see that from this perspective now, you know, because it's actually kind of like, there's really no graceful way for them to explain it to you, even if they try to set it up for you before the flight to say, hey, you know, look, you know, I just want you to relax, take it easy, we'll treat it like a Sunday drive, you know, or whatever. That sort of beckons the feeling that you have when you're at the doctor, you know, or something, when they're like, I mean, it's really not that, you know, it's not going to hurt too bad, you know, or whatever. It's almost like the kinder and more deferential they are to you, the more you're almost skeptical because so much of the paranoia, right, is around what's a fail and how do you read the signals and the signs and what do you say and what do you not say. It becomes this whole behavior exercise, and that's kind of the stuff that gets you amped up. So you got to just relax, man.
Hey, Josh is here.
Hey, Josh.
Josh is a patron. And for those of you listening to the audio podcast, reminder that we record these live every other Wednesday night at 8:00 Eastern. And we do it with a group of folks who hang out with us. We're on YouTube and Facebook, and we do a ton of this interaction. So if you want to be part of the podcast, you can join us on those Wednesdays. Josh is here. I'm going to share a link in the chat. I hope he doesn't mind. I actually caught one of his videos. YouTube actually prompted me it showed up for me in in my feed earlier. Josh flies a Cirrus reasonably near me up around the Pittsburgh area, and he had to help out ATC, who there was an airplane that they weren't talking to, squawking 7,700, and Josh was in their vicinity, and he actually went over and checked it out and like kind of circled the plane and watched them land at the airport and talked to them on a CTAF frequency.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty cool.
When did this come out? When did this happen?
I just saw the video. It looked like it was published a few days ago. I think it was pretty recent, but I'm going to share the link in the chat if anybody wants to check it out. It was kind of an interesting, just like things that were happening there, and how they were able to go like update the controller, who had no idea. The controller lost the guy from radar and was not sure what happened to him. And so like Josh actually came back to him, like, I just talked to him. He landed safe. He said it was on May 8th. So that's kind of an interesting. It's short. It's a good short video. It's a good watch if you guys have time to check it out. It's pretty interesting. So
yeah, we should just plug Josh in. Just send him the link. He can. So, can you send me that link? I can't get it in the chat, but I'd like to, or I can't get it in the screen thing.
Yeah, where do you
Oh wait,
want
I'm
it?
sorry. No, I've got it over here. Never mind.
You've complicated
Okay, cool.
my life is complicated when you start talking tech things and we get weird.
No, you're fine.
All right.
Josh, man, this is awesome. Why am I not subscribed to Josh? I'm now subscribed to Josh. So everybody else can do that.
Yep. Go subscribe. Check it out.
Speaking of, for those that are listening on the audio bit, which is, I guess, where most people are listening, thanks for leaving all the Apple review things or whatever, because it actually seems to really help.
Yeah.
So we've got probably, I don't know, 12 or so ratings over there now. We'd like to get to, 100,000 or 200,000 sometime in the next, 90 days.
Oh, okay.
So,
that's good.
but if you can do little rate things or leave little review things or just press little good energy buttons around on software things, and it'll help us.
Hey, I'm going to share a video on social media too in the coming days. I sent it to you already, Brian, but there was a pretty cool, there's a book. It kind of blew my mind. It was written by an air traffic controller that works in Washington Center. The book is called A Pilot's Guide to Air Traffic Control by Andy Watson. It's A Pilot's Guide to Air Traffic Control. Who's really in control? Real life ATC stories. And one of our club members, who's also a CFI, who's also both of her parents are center controllers in Washington Center, and her dad actually trained this guy when he started working there. She sent me a video of her opening up this book, and he scrolls through this section of where it's like, I'd like to thank the following YouTube channels, and says, in addition, I would like to thank the following podcasts. And he scrolls down to this list, and I kid you not, in print, Midlife Pilot Podcast is listed in print in this guy's book as like a thank you. And I was like, it just goes to show you how wild is that? Like Washington Center controller who just wrote a book, called us out in his book. So I'm going to post that. That's a fun little video. I'm going to post it on social media. And we'll have to, I told her, I want to get in touch with him. I want to get a copy of the book, and then he might be a great guest to come on and talk.
There you go.
Stuff.
Yeah. This is a no brainer. Yeah. That's awesome. What's the name of the book again?
It's called A Pilot's Guide to Air Traffic Control. Pilot's Guide to Air Traffic Control. It's by Andy Watson. So I'll find out more information on where you can get it and that kind of stuff, and share that with everybody as well.
Awesome.
We have about like 12 minutes left or so. We'll see if we can. If you got more questions, hit us up in the chat. Here's an interesting one, Brian, that I haven't thought about. Although I should have. I am a big-ish student, or I was, I guess. Foodhead says, how about cabin etiquette for big students in small planes?
By the way, that sounds like a great YouTube channel idea. Big students in small planes.
Just like get it. Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
I would watch that. So I'm very not large person. So this is all you, Chris.
I mean, I don't know, 211. I don't know. Is that, I mean, I was lucky because I had a small instructor in Tyler. So we complimented each other. He's small, both like height and girth. So
he's a narrow dude.
Yeah. It made it pretty easy on us. We managed to both fly that 172 the whole time. I don't think we ever even like rubbed shoulders. It was, we had plenty of room in that plane. I don't know that I've experienced, I mean, I've flown with bigger fellas.
So is there cabin etiquette?
Brush your teeth. I mean, it's just like general. Okay. I don't know if it has to be with being. I think I don't know if that's what he's asking, but that's what I think when I hear etiquette.
Or like pilot arm goes on top.
Yeah.
Of other arms.
You always got to put your arms around. See, I don't know. I've done it to everybody I've ever flown with. At some point, invariably, my arm ends up around the other seat. That's just part of the nature of it. I think that's generally accepted behavior. Maybe don't touch the person, but like you can make it around the seat. I don't know. It's challenging, it's tight quarters. And, although I have also found stuff that would normally bother me in a safe space on the ground, once you get in the air and you're flying the airplane, like so many less things matter now. Like I'm way less concerned about how close this dude is to me, what his breath smells like it's kind of like focused on what you're doing. So it's maybe not so bad.
Yeah. It's not like when you're in the bank line and there's somebody breathing on the back of your neck.
Oh. That's
the one. All right. So, Yeah, I mean, it looks like we're pretty well through everything. We can probably just go ahead and send it off.
Yeah, let's wrap it up then. Appreciate everybody hanging out as always. Like and subscribe. You guys know the drill for the normal stuff. We got another one coming up in 2 weeks. I promise there are videos coming to my YouTube channel. I have so much content that I just need to get on it. When's yours published, Brian? I can't wait to watch
this weird one.
Yeah, the weird one.
I don't know.
Or share it with me privately.
I could put it out next day or two, but I might wait another couple of days.
I'm excited to see it. So be sure to check that out. Check out Josh's channel linked in the comments there. If you haven't, he's a serious dude out of Pittsburgh, and it's good stuff.
Cool. All right, man. Well, thanks for everything. Thanks for everybody asking so many awesome questions. Hopefully this helps people that are, I don't know, in the midst of it, or, sometimes it's good to unpack old traumas like flight training.
For sure. We'll talk to you all in a couple weeks.
All right. Later, everybody.